Hi, this presentation is from Umeda AG, your sustainable groundwater management experts. This presentation is all about net zero water farming, a race against time to meet SGMA requirements. In California, we have both a problem and an opportunity. In California, the problem is that we're overdrafting our agricultural land by 30%, which means that we're going to have to fallow up to 30% of our agricultural land to get to groundwater balancing. But if we can reduce water by 30%, that means we keep 100% of our land in production. And we also have a new statement to give to the world that all of our crops are sustainable for long term. In California, we have this new law called SGMA, which puts a timeline for us to get to groundwater balancing. And the first plans came out in 2020. The next group is due in 2022. And we have to start thinking about hitting groundwater balancing within 5 years and have a plan to be fully groundwater balanced in 20 years. But that doesn't account for droughts. So we have this time race to get there much faster than the due date in 20 years. Now, current strategies are all about drip irrigation. Drip irrigation allows us to conserve water, but does not allow us for recharging. Drip irrigation, you always see that big puddle on the surface as it's dripping, and that puddle is constantly being evaporated, constantly being moved away. And then when you turn off the drip irrigation, you still have that top 3 inches of all that moist soil that's going to be evaporated away from the solar heat. Now for recharging, we have 2 solutions currently around. The first one is called flood irrigation or flood mar, where we flood the fields and get them fully saturated while the trees are dormant to recharge the groundwater. And the second option that we have is drain tiles. And then what's happened is that the drain tiles are placed 14 to 10 feet below the surface and are used as what are called a reverse drain tile scenario, meaning that they're not trying to drain the water out, but they're filling the drain tiles with water and trying to get water down into the groundwater basin below all the advantages of irrigation. Now, the natural water table currently is about anywhere from 75 feet down to 500 feet. And then you have that natural capillary fringe, which is about 2 to 5 feet above the saturated zone. And the saturated zone, the fully saturated zone, is called the groundwater table. And it's dropping anywhere from 1 foot to 2 feet per year. So we got to get this under control. And our solution is to move that water table up into we call it a virtual water table. And we create this virtual saturated zone, which also has a virtual capillary fringe associated with it. That fringe is still 2 to 3 feet from the surface, but also 2 to 3 feet in height. So, and that saturated zone is buried 5 feet below the surface. The whole idea is to get that capillary fringe into the zone of where the roots can absorb the water. Now, I want to emphasize that this isn't a new technology. We've actually been using subsurface irrigation of this special type of pipe, the Aquifer Pipe, in urban areas for the last 4 years. We actually take water from showers and laundries and actually irrigate lawns with it subsurfacely, about a foot, placing the pipe about a foot below the surface and creating this moisture plume that is 8 feet wide. The difference is that in agriculture, we're going from a 3-inch pipe diameter to a 6-inch pipe diameter, thus creating a much bigger moisture plume in which the trees can feed from. Now, the virtual water table that we're creating sits in the middle of the service road. That means you have trees 10 feet to 11 feet on each side of the pipe. And we use this large 6-inch diameter pipe down the center of that road, and it's specially designed to create this moisture plume. And that moisture plume goes 2 feet high and 14 feet wide. So we're creating this moisture plume the full length of the orchard road, that service road. And then the trees feed from that moisture plume, not from the pipe itself. Now we're creating the virtual table so far below the surface that we cut water consumption by 50%. And that's because we're limiting all water loss to evaporation. We're feeding trees where they need it, at the roots, but not allowing any water to be lost to evaporation. Our approach in our product is what's called the Aquifer Pipe. It's 6-inch diameter and can run for a full length up to a mile. Some people call it a smart drain tile or a subsurface irrigation. But in this picture, we're showing the V shape of it. In that center area where you see that quarter, that shows how big this pipe is. It's not a small pipe. It's much larger than if you stand your phone up. Your phone is going to still need a couple more inches to be the size of a 6-inch diameter pipe. And we're pushing water along the side channels of that pipe. And then it seeps into the center channel through seep holes that are 1/4 inch. That center channel becomes fully saturated, basically a virtual water table. That allows the surrounding soil to wick it up and create that moisture plume that we showed in the past slide. That moisture plume that's 2 feet high and 14 feet wide is where the trees feed from. They never feed from the pipe itself. They're always feeding from the moisture plume that's being created. Now for recharging the water table, so the pipe itself, the Aquifer Pipe, can be used for both. It can be used for during the summertime just to create the virtual saturated zone and the virtual capillary fringe to feed the trees and not let any water go down to deep percolation. But in the wintertime, or when there's abundance of surface water, you want to overcharge it, meaning you want to add more water than is really needed for the trees to get that additional water that's available on the surface down into the aquifer and recharging the groundwater. That allows you to pick up additional groundwater banking credits and create that longer sustainability for your farm. Now I say that in the wintertime, but you can actually recharge it anytime there's an availability of surface water. Because it's so far below the surface, you're not going to disrupt any type of surface operations. Now there are plenty of other benefits to the pipe. And we don't emphasize them as much as we emphasize the water because we're really trying to help farmers achieve groundwater balancing on an individual basis. But you're going to start to see savings in some of these other areas, such as less weeds. Because there's no surface water being applied, you don't have weed seeds that are being germinated. So that completely eliminates the need for herbicides and the labor to apply the herbicides. Another advantage is that there's less irrigation maintenance. Because we remove all the surface irrigation, it's all subsurface, you don't have rodents eating up irrigation lines or pests clogging up the orifices or even the calcium buildup on your drip emitters due to the hard water that we have here in California. So all that maintenance goes away. There's no surface water during harvest time. So you're not going to worry about at the harvest time shaking the trees and having the nuts sitting in some type of water and developing a fungi and causing reduction in your crop yield. You don't have the sprinkler systems or the drip systems too close to the trees where it's eating away at that crown and causing a crown rot in your trees to die. That's because, once again, the surface water is all below the surface, about 2 feet to 3 feet. Now you can recharge anytime. So unlike Floodmar, which is typically a winter type recharging system, in this system you can recharge any time of the year, whenever there's an abundance of water. So as I'm talking about this right now, it's early March. The flowers have already bloomed on the almonds, and we're having a nice rainstorm right now, which would have been a great time to take additional water and recharge the orchards. But it would also be a bad time with the flood to flood your orchard and cause some damage to your crop this early in the season. But with the Aquifer Pipe, you can do it any time of the year. Now the pipe is down below and the moisture plume is quite a ways below. The tree roots are going to start to grow deeper, 3 feet, 5 feet down depth into the soil structure. So as the crop starts to grow and it starts to get really top heavy, you're not going to have blowovers to your trees. And with the deep roots, we're also seeing some interest in how it might increase chill hours. And the logic behind that is that currently we measure chill hours on the surface. And as with most of our irrigation being drip, the roots are closer to the surface as well. So in the wintertime, on a hot winter day, that soil warms up and wakes up the dormant roots. By pushing the roots deeper to 3 to 5 feet depths, we're going to be away from that thermal heat of the winter days or warmer winter days, thus increasing the chill hours for the trees. That's a very interesting study that I'm looking forward to seeing more about. And then there's a sustainable long-term farming. That's a value added to anybody who has to sell your product to a value chain where they want to make sure that there's going to be sustainable farming inputs to their products, either a juicing company or a large restaurant chain. That additional value of showing that you're at groundwater balancing and you're not going to be limited to restricting your crop during a drought or other situation is going to give you that value added that you can add to your harvest and your crops because you're sustainable for long-term generations. So let us help you reach groundwater balancing and groundwater balancing farming. Give us a call. We're happy to come out, look at your farm, talk about the different ideas and how a step-by-step approach to meeting groundwater balancing under SGMA applications or just because you want to be more of a sustainable farmer in the future. Thank you. Talk to you soon.